Good afternoon. This is John McAllister. Welcome you to the Around the State video podcast. And today I have as my guest Kevin Katafias, a top Northwestern Ohio official. He's been doing it for 42 years. He's okay to come on and talk to me about all areas of football officiating. He himself is a referee, and he's done it for a long time. I'm excited. I'm excited to hear what he has to say, and hopefully I'll give him some good questions. Thank you, and stay tuned. Mr. Kevin Katafias from Genoa. We're going to talk football officiating today, and I would tell you ahead of time that Kevin is also a basketball official, and we're going to not talk about that very much, but he does both. Mr. Katafias, how are you today?
Doing great, John. Thank you.
Tell me about the middle school at Genoa, what you do.
We have about 330 students here at Genoa, grades 6, 7, and 8. And been a good start to the school year. We have a great staff. Makes my job a lot easier, but a lot of challenges with that. But take it on every day, and hopefully we're making a positive impact on students each day.
That's good. You've been a principal there for 23 years, right?
Yeah. I started in Genoa in 1995. I was the assistant principal and athletic director for 4 years, and then took over the middle school principal's position, and been doing that ever since. So now I'm getting generational. I'm getting students of former students. So
that's good. Okay, let's talk about football officiating. I believe it's important to get a quick background on how you've done it, where how long you've been doing it, and things like that. So tell me what you know. Okay,
John. I got started back in 1970. I think it was 78. I graduated from high school in 1977, but I wasn't old enough to officiate yet because I wasn't 18. So the following fall, I got involved. Actually, my older brother's friend encouraged me to do it. I had done CYO basketball in high school for a couple of years and started basketball, and he said, you ought to pick up football, and I did that. And, years later, we ended up on the same crew, and then my older brother picked it up later on, and I've been doing it. I think this is my 44th year of football coming up, or in the middle of 44th year, and I really love it. It's a great challenge, but it's a nice release after work and everything else. And to me, it's the next best thing to playing. I was not a very good player, just an average player at best, but stay involved in the game. And it's a real challenge to keep up on the rules and the mechanics. And to me, other than coaching, it's the best way to stay involved.
That's really good. And you work with the same crew primarily every game, varsity game?
Yes. Like I said, I worked with my older brother and Brian Carter and Bob Nussbaum and Jim Hendricks. We probably worked together about 15 years, and most of those guys are retired or moved. And now we started a new crew about 5 years ago, and it's been refreshing to work with some different people that didn't know really well, and we bond really well and have a good time out there, but take it very seriously. And these guys are great officials too: Jeff Clear, Derek Diller, Brody Wagner, and Dave Hostler. So it's a great opportunity.
That's really good. Well, this is a twofold podcast today. The first one, let's talk about its players, and then at the end we'll talk about the state of football officiating, by the way. And now let's add one more thing, because I did a little homework. How many state championship games have you had?
4 finals.
4 finals and how many playoff games?
Oh boy.
Okay, that's good. You've done a lot, I'm sure. But you've
Probably 120, 140. I don't know. Yeah.
really good. It's really good, and I hope it goes to someday where you have your crew working the games rather than all-star crews. I hope it probably won't, but I hope it comes to that someday.
Yeah.
I think that's better. I think it's better. But anyway, okay, let's talk about kids. We're going to go kids. Let's go kids first. What are the biggest concerns that you have with kids playing, with football right now, as far as with their reception to officiating? What are there any concerns? Are they keeping their egos locked up, or how do you work with the kids?
John, I think kids are still kids. They, they enjoy playing the game. I guess the down part is, they watch TV just like anyone else, and sometimes pick up some bad habits. But all in all, they're pretty respectful, and I think football's the greatest team game in my opinion, and I think they really cherish that opportunity to participate as part of a team, and don't want to take that chance of getting a foul, a penalty that will hurt their team or take them off the field. They enjoy playing, and the coaches, they kind of rein them in, and if they screw up or do something wrong, they'll pull them off the field, and that is a drastic effect. So,
right.
In general, I think sportsmanship is pretty good at the student level. Obviously there's outliers and things happen, but
a lot of them,
in my opinion, it's still good.
Good. And then, they still play with emotion. They still want to win like anybody else. And I think it's getting better. I watch a lot of Division I games and 2 games. I scout, college prospects. And so I see a lot of games, and usually they're good. What do you think excessive celebration for high school students? What's that about?
Well, what the state and I guess the National Federation, they don't want athletes garnering attention to themselves. If they celebrate with a teammate or a group of players, they don't mind that as long as it's positive. It's not taunting to another player. They're not doing, throat slashes and things like that, or, drawing attention to themselves. So as long as they're not doing that, I think, like you said, the emotion, it's encouraged, and it needs to be, because football is a tough game. I mean, you're getting knocked around, and you're in August double sessions and the heat and humidity and everything else, and it's you only get one shot a week, so that emotion has to be positive, but it has to be directed in the right way. And the excessive celebration, I think, other than kids watching TV and making a bad choice, otherwise it's pretty good.
That's really, I mean, I'm not critiquing you, but that's a great answer. You go back to one thing. I think that what's taunting then to a football official? What's taunting?
Yeah. You say something to another player, point, anything that would put down an opponent is taunting and frowned upon. And obviously you're going to get a foul, and then there's a penalty assigned to that. And it's just not good, obviously. And a couple things: it draws from the game, it hurts your team, plus it makes a bad atmosphere for the game, and that's not good.
Right. Okay. Then let's see. What are the biggest? Well, no, I have one. I'll go with coaches on that one. What are the biggest changes right now with the game? What do you see? What's the latest changes, and then include the blocking rule of everything's got to be high now.
Yeah, other than that, at the snap you can still block low, but it's got to be immediate. And, but I think the openness of the game, the spread offenses and zone running games. So the offensives have probably changed quite a bit in the last 15, 20 years. So the game's opened up, but there's still teams that run the ball well out of that, and there's still teams that run wing tees or whatever formations they have. So I guess that's the biggest change, and that's a challenge for officials too, because it spreads the field out. And for a high school varsity game, there's only 5 of us, and you spread the field out, and it's kind of difficult to pick up some of that stuff. But we do our best, and I think the coaches are understanding. The throws are usually not very deep, so we can usually monitor that pretty well.
Right. And I think the other thing with that is, I would like to see a 6th official, but they're hard enough to pay him now, I guess. But I'd like to see that. Hopefully he wouldn't get in the way, but I would like to see that in the middle of the field. And then
they actually for the state finals and some of the other crews, they do use 6 officials,
right.
And they put an extra official actually in the offensive backfield because they're worried about blocking below the waist by not only the offense but the defense, and that's a big concern because we obviously don't want any student athletes to be injured. So that's been prevalent for the last few years, the 6th official in playoff games.
Thanks, Coach. What about coaches now? What will you tell them? How do they affect the game as far from your standpoint? I mean, what do you tell how much do you tolerate sidelines and complaining and things like that? What's your thinking on that, Coach or Kevin?
Yeah, in our pregame meeting with the coaches, we just ask them, coaches are coaches, and that's what they need to do. And they get emotional and want to be. We ask that if they call plays either offensively or defensively between plays, you can step onto the field for a step or two, but then we want you to back up, and they're pretty good about that. And everybody wants to crowd that sideline, but they do a pretty good job of helping us out because we need the room to officiate, and we don't need those players or coaches on the sidelines to be in the way and get injured. But
running up and down the sidelines, I'm on the sidelines for about every game, and I honor that. And plus, I'm too old. I don't get run over by an official, which happened in Texas years ago.
Yeah,
but that's where it all started, I think. Okay, that's good. And then, how do you handle if a coach how do you handle complaints? How do you handle, you've thrown a interference call, you're throwing the flag, and the one coach is just livid. How do you handle that? You personally, how do you handle that?
Yeah, we ask the officials that work on that sideline to communicate with the coach, and if it happens on the opposite side of the field, we get the word across as soon as we can. And one thing we try to do is, if it's you mentioned interference, if it was interference, we're going to try to explain to that coach what happened. Did the player wrap the player? Was it early contact? Try to be more specific with the coach than just what the foul was. So, and then, make sure we give that coach a number so they know exactly what it was. And, they just appreciate the communication, and they don't have to agree with it. But I think in the long run, if we're all doing our job, we're looking for the betterment of the game, and they realize that, we're just trying to communicate well and make ourselves available to them so that, we can communicate throughout the game, not on penalties.
That's good. And then I was a track official for a long, long time, and every once in a while you'd get a complaint, and I'd always say, I'd let him explain. I tell him what I thought, and I give him one more chance, and then I say, "That's enough. That's enough. We're done." And I usually work, but let's talk about then. We talked about the players and your relationship with them a little bit, but come back and how do you? I missed a question with the players. How do you? Your job's not to make a friend, but how do you communicate with players, high school players? You personally, how do you do? I mean, now you're getting a little bit age on you, so but you still have wisdom. But how do you communicate? Are you a tough guy? Or do you listen? Or are you patient? Or how do you, Kevin? How do you communicate?
I'd like to think I'm patient, but that's not always the case, John. So we all have our moments, but um, we try to throughout the game. If we can warn a player, like let's say we have a stack pile and then we have a player kind of coming in late and jumping over the pile. As long, if they don't foul, we'll say, well, thanks for jumping over the pile, or, you got to be careful here. You don't want to hurt your team. And, hopefully they pick up on that. Another thing, if we get a player that gets, a little mouthy here and there, we'll tell the coach. We'll talk to the player as well, but we'll tell the coach, because the coach, the players are used to hearing their coach. So if the coach says something to them, hopefully they respond. But we try to work with them as much as we can. But obviously they go overboard, then it's a foul. But kids will like I said, want to be on the field, so they'll generally help out and take the advice to heart. But just those little things like or nice play. One time, sometimes we get chippy play after a play, and kids will start want to talk across, and we'll just say, talk to your teammates, and generally, hopefully within those 2 or 3 seconds, it kind of subsides and they go back to their respective sides of the ball.
And you want to keep them on the field, right?
Yeah.
Keep them in the game. That's really good. Last one, and I pick officials' brains along the sidelines before games, things like that. I had a guy tell me that with officials, it's tougher in the JV. Parents are more outspoken in JV games and freshman games, junior high games, and I would think youth league games. But they seem to be. Go ahead.
That's all right. I'm sorry.
They seem to be more outspoken. How do you deal with the parents? You personally?
Yeah, I don't engage them, John. That's a no-win situation, and at the high school varsity level, and it is frustrating. And at the lower level, JV or youth football, the parents yell, and it's just not good for younger officials. We're trying to bring in officials, and they have to learn the game, and they're going to make mistakes, but so are the players make mistakes and the coaches make mistakes. It's a game, and they lose sight of that sometimes, and that's unfortunate. But I try not to get engaged with parents, because it's like I said, it's a no-win situation. We really have to be careful in this day of technology, because everybody has a phone, and man, you say or do the wrong thing, it's going to be on. Somebody's going to record it and put it on social media. So
you're so right. It's so crazy, but it's true. Okay, that's really good. I'm impressed with what you're saying about keeping kids in the game and wanting kids in the game and give them a warning and things like that. And they don't want to talk back too much, I don't think. I mean, because you're still in charge of the game, the officials. Okay, let's talk about officiating then, getting young officials into the game. Somebody told me, I don't know if it's true, but the average age of officials is something like 49 or 50, the average age. Do you guess that to be true?
Yeah, things I read in Referee Magazine and such through their surveys, that's probably true. In our area, that might be true, and I'm 61, and people say, what's going to happen down the road, but there's still a lot of good young officials that are getting into the game, and we got to look at it as a positive and get more former players to participate. And I always tell kids, if I see them and if I know them once they get out of high school, you either should coach or officiate, give back to the game. So and I think officiating is better than coaching, because you only take grief for a while and it ends. Those coaches get it all the time. You should know that. But we just have to keep recruiting, and hopefully, what I always say, coaches should help us out and encourage their players once they're done playing to stay involved in the game.
Right.
So.
Okay. With that being said, I've just called you and said. You said, I just called you last night and said, hey, I want to get into officiating. Okay. What's the first thing I should do? And you said something to me when we talked before about getting a buddy. I thought that was a great idea. I don't know if I've heard that before or not.
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate because I knew some people. So, it's always tough if, you've never done this before. Grab a friend if you can, and then kind of go through it together, take the class together or whatever. And, football, I know years ago, there was a kind of a group of guys that got together and they ended up putting their crew together, from the get go. And, that's just a great way to get started and have a little, I guess, a little comfort level there, John, to at least, someone you can talk to and, share stories with and issues and questions you might have about officiating. So I think that's a good way to do it, or sometimes it's a brother, it could be a relative, an in-law, a cousin, whatever it might be. I think, it's just, and the truthfully, the bonding of, I've gotten to know so many people, friends that I have for life now that I would have never known unless I became an official, that you just can't put a stamp on that. I mean, as a younger person, maybe that doesn't seem to matter, but as a guy that's been around a long time, that's a big thing to me, is all the great people that I've met over the years. Right.
Okay. What's the class then? Tell me about the class.
Yeah. To become an official, you have to take a class. Actually, there's if you go to the Ohio High School Athletic Association website, ohsaa.org, there's right on their main page, there's a link for officiating, and you click on that, and then there's officiating, and it says how to become an official, and it'll kind of just take you through step by step. And then depending on where you live, there's classes in different areas. You take the class. After the class, you take a test, you pass the test, and then you join a local association, and you can be on the field ready to go. So, and the good thing now, John, is that they really work with the officials, not with players, but they get on the field and show them how to work the mechanics and where to position themselves. So it's a lot different than when I started. So it's really good.
I think anything you can do to pick up on that, that when they postponed it or canceled it last year, the Ohio High School Football Coaches Association has this huge 7-on-7 tournament in Dublin, and Central, they would, to entice guys to work that, officials and young officials, I think they gave them a meeting and something else credit for that. And I thought that was a great idea. Anytime you're working with stuff like that, I worry that the negative part too is a lot of people want instant gratification. They want to be working the varsity. They want to work Toledo Central Catholic and Toledo St. John's Friday night. They've been an official for like a month, 2 weeks or a year or 6 months. And sometimes they get discouraged. They don't want to do JV games and freshman games and things like that. But you see that? Do you see much of that?
We try to be pretty upfront with newer people. Like, it takes a while, and I always say, be careful what you wish for, because those games, that they look good on TV or in the media, that's a big game, and they are. but and there's a lot of attention, media attention in general, but I don't think you want to work one of those games and be over your head, so to speak. And then mistakes happen, and you kind of get a bad reputation early on. So, you kind of have to work your way up to get those games. But there certainly are opportunities. So,
right. What's the expense for new official going in? What would be my expenses for the first year?
Yeah, that's kind of the down part is, it takes a little money to get involved. You take the class, and depending on the area, it's probably anywhere from $85 to $100 to take the class, I believe. And then uniforms get a little costly. You probably can get into, anywhere from $150 to $200, with pants, shoes, shirts, whistles, etc. Maybe a little more than that. On the other hand, you can get it back pretty quick.
Right.
Games are a varsity game is paying anywhere from $70 to $75, and even lower level games are paying, $45 to $50, and so you work a few games and you're kind of back to even. So it's a little upfront, but you can make it up pretty quick.
Well, I think one of the keys, and I've really appreciated this. I'm looking to see in my notes any more questions. But I would say, if you can I think it's really neat if you can get together and work as many games. And then the other thing, as a young coach growing up, I was lucky to be a head coach, maybe too early, head football coach. But when you go, you need to get your name out there as much as you can. So I think a young coach, and this may not sound right, but I think our young official, I'm going to call you sometime with a couple of questions, because I want you to know my name, and I want you to say, yeah, I remember him. And, let's cut to the chase. Kevin, you're very well respected in Northwest Ohio. I don't know the other areas if you work those games. So a guy says, yeah, I met Mr. Katafias and call him. So the guy says, AD says, hey, I've got this kid that wants to officiate. What do you think? And then you're going to talk a little bit about him. And I think making the connections or the networking is huge in officiating. Is there any truth to that or not?
Yes. I mean, the best thing is to get to know people, like we talked earlier, just to get started. But then you want to know some people that have been in the business for a while so they can help you along. And, it's not like a class you take in college or something. You have to be on the field and work the game. So the best thing is I always enjoy that. Once in a while, we mentioned earlier that we work with our crew, but I enjoy working with some other officials, and sometimes on a lower level game, I work a few and work with a newer official and try to give them a couple pointers and, just encourage them to keep at it. And there's some really good young guys coming up, and they really have a bright future, and it's a neat avocation, because learning the rules and being part of the game is great. And to me, it's just a fulfilling thing personally as well. So you have to network, like you said, John, and get to know people, and ask questions. And that's the only way you learn. And truthfully, working those lower level games, that's how you learn. I remember way back in the day, worked CYO games, and things would happen, and boy, that's how you learn the rules.
Right. And positioning and things like that, I think are huge. Okay. And I'm going to check my notes here and see if, I have one more question. You may not, and then we're going to end this. I also heard in the Cleveland area, I was talking to a couple of officials, and they said they have trouble up there. Now, maybe Northwest getting officials. And he said, sometime the day is going to come when they're going to move more games to Thursday or move more games to Saturday. So maybe a guy can work 2 games in a weekend, official. Do you see that coming at all? Has that been bounced around at all?
I have not heard that as an immediate concern, but I can see that happening. And in fact, I was talking to somebody the other day, at the lower levels because there's a lot of games on Thursdays. And I think
Right.
at some point there's going to be more Tuesday and Wednesday games or whatever, because, there is a shortage. I mean, like I said, we're holding our own in our area, but I'm on an email group and there's emails all the time. Like today's Wednesday, there'll be emails. We need somebody for Thursday to work a JV game or whatever, junior high game, whatever it might be. And that's the sad truth. I don't see it, in the next year or two, but I certainly can see it down the road, John.
Down the road. Well, sir, I have one basketball question for you. Okay, you're a basketball people. We're not going to talk basketball because I think that's worse than football officiating. Man, you're right there, and right there. Tell me, have you ever removed? You've done it for 42 years too, or something like that. I know, but have you ever had a spectator removed from the gym?
Yeah, not a lot, but
we don't have to talk about it. But
no, I tell you what, though, John, last year, probably as part of our crew, basketball, probably more than ever with the pandemic, you could certainly hear people last year.
Oh my!
So usually they just muffle, but last year they stood out. So
and nobody else is talking when they yell that either, right? I mean,
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kevin Katafias. I really appreciate it. We've touched a lot of bases, and I appreciate your help. Okay,
John, thanks for what you do in promoting football in general. And if I can ever be of assistance down the road, feel free to call me again. And anything I can do to help, and just keep plugging the game. It's a great game, and anything you do is truly appreciated.
Ohio high school football is really great. I will tell you this. Every once in a while, I'll get an email from an official that I know. He says, John, we had this game. You know about Kevin Dutton. I get an email like that or a text. I'm more of an email, but that happens once in a while. I appreciate it again, and thank you so much for being on my podcast. Thank you.